Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome back for another Doctor Who ranking, also recording on the 7th of August 2025, but these reviews will come out a little bit later, but hopefully before the Season 2 DVD Blu-ray and Steelbook come out on August 18th, so pretend I'm holding that one up. Actually, Season 1 one is also away, so yeah, but that was more for the Season 2 ranking video, which I did... and then I had lunch. And now I'm back for the top 10 15th Doctor stories ranking. I did consider just top 5 or going in the middle with top 7 or 8. Because the 15th Doctor's only got 16 stories across his tenure. 17 if you count the giggle, which I will not be counting on the list. But I will mention later where I would put that if I was including it. But yeah, I eventually decided to just keep to what I've been doing and do full-on top 10. It just means that 6 stories will not be included. Well, actually, there's an honourable and dishonourable mention, so technically 4 stories aren't being included. However, at the end, I will cover where those other stories would have come in the list, along with the giggle as well. Although that would be more of a where on the list that would come. And then anything after 10, so 11 to 16, will mention those at the end as well, though my honourable mention will be number 11 anyway, and dishonourable mention will be number 16. That's how it tends to work. The honourable mention is what would have come 11th or in the top 5, what would have come 6th. And then dishonourable mention is whatever comes last. So the 15th Doctor stories, I won't go through every single one of them. I don't do that on these rankings. I only do that for the season rankings. But we've got 16 stories over 18 episodes, not counting the giggle. And because I did the Season 2 ranking earlier, and the video would have come out just before this, or relatively before this, then I've talked about 8 of those stories already. Some of those will be on the list, so I'll try not to go over what I've already done with those. And you can go back and rewatch older reviews for more opinions on each story as well. So with that all out of the way, let's get on to the list, starting with the dishonourable mention. So, in my opinion, the weakest 15th Doctor story. It is worth noting that Ncuti has had hints about being up for returning, but as I mentioned in the Season 2 ranking, that could just be multi-Doctor story, that could just be guest appearance, or maybe sometime down the line Big Finish, or maybe in next year's multimedia platform story Circuit Breaker. We shall see, but because of the ending of the Reality War, unless it's retconned in a later episode, if/when that ever happens, then as of right now, the Reality War is the last episode, which the Reality War is the last story. So I'm confident I'm doing this as a kind of an end of the year ranking as opposed to top 10 stories as of May 2025, when the last episode aired, August 2025 at time of recording and video going out. So yeah, as opposed to this is where we're up to now, which I might have done for the 13th Doctor after Series 12 came out. I'm not sure, but I definitely did a one after her full era came out. So I'm going to treat this as the end of the era one, but if the era somehow does end up carrying on, then we'll update this one, and if not, then this is it. So back to the dishonourable mention, and my least favourite story from 15's run is the Season 1 Bad Wolf finale, The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death. Right, well, Legend of Ruby Sunday I actually really like. I think that one's an interesting setup story, and it's teasing really well. I think it works as a good setup. Well, it is mostly setup, but again, it is still pretty good. Empire of Death is really where it lets down, because like most of the big thing that happens early on with Sutek spreading the death sand, and just leaves the Doctor, Mel, and Ruby as the only survivors in the memory TARDIS. But quite honestly, the episode just doesn't really... I don't know, I think the stakes are too high too soon. And after the getting over the shock reveal / return of Sutek, and also the questionable design, I mean, it's fair enough, it at least sort of looks similar to his what he really looks like when we see him in Pyramids of Mars. He's got the mask on, and then we see his sort of dog head as well. So that's what he really looks like. So it's not too much of a stretch from there. But then he ends up not doing anything. At least in Pyramids of Mars, he didn't really do anything, but he was mysterious and spooky and built up the suspense because we knew he had all this power and he was trapped. So the suspense was if he broke free, he would use this power, which this story takes advantage of. But then he doesn't really do anything else. Once he does the particle sand thing, he's just a big CG dog on top of the TARDIS for the rest of the story, and it's a bit of a disappointment. It's not as bad as what happens to Omega in the next season finale, but yeah, Sutekh was done a bit dirty. There's also this random scene where the Doctor goes to another planet to get a spoon because they can't use a spoon from the memory TARDIS, and we have this scene that feels nice, but it would be nice, but it doesn't really add anything, really. I mean, apart from to further establish what we already know about the death particle killing everything and making people forget. But then, it feels like it's a scene Stephen Moffat would have done for, say, Hellbent, maybe. It's just, it feels like the scene where the Doctor goes to see me for the shield and me for literally no reason. It just feels added in just for extra emotional value. And then, the Doctor, he basically uses the spoon so that Ruby and Mel could watch Pyramids of Mars on BBC iPlayer. Sorry, Tales from the TARDIS Pyramids of Mars on BBC iPlayer, because they use the updated visual effects. So, yeah, it's... I mean, again, as I mentioned in the Season 2 ranking, is that something for the international audiences who may have not be able to access classic Who or older New Who, especially now that the other streaming rights have expired from the majority of international countries recently. Is it a way for people to access to see a bit of classic Who without having to try and track down hard to find or expensive DVDs and Blu-rays and videos and don't have access to streaming it? Unless they use a VPN, perhaps, and they can access iPlayer. And yet there's also the Classic Doctor YouTube channel that's uploading them for free on YouTube, so that could be something to encourage. But yeah, it just feels odd, especially from a British person's point of view, where as I mentioned, we've got all at least the majority of it on BBC iPlayer and on DVD, Blu-ray, some VHS, which is a bit harder to find, but if you've got them, you've got those. So, yeah, as I mentioned, we have the best home media range, or at least the easiest to access it. So I'm not quite sure what the decision is, and apart from to maybe help international audiences who may not have seen Pyramids on Mars or other stories understand it, but it just feels odd that the Doctor and Ruby are basically watching Tales from the TARDIS Pyramids on Mars on basically a screen. And whilst I don't mind Ruby's mother's reveal, I do think that it doesn't really match with what has been built up, and I think there could have been an explanation for that. My theory was that Mrs. Flood was kind of manipulating things so that Ruby wouldn't be able to find out who her mother was until Sutekh was defeated, because Sutekh wanted to know, so therefore Ruby couldn't know, so that she and the Doctor could defeat Sutekh, and once he was gone, she could find out and reunite with her. But it's never fully stated that was the case. That was my theory until the Reality War came out, and they just never mentioned it. All Mrs. Flood was to Ruby was her neighbour that she spied on. And maybe if Mrs. Flood had mentioned it, or if the Rani had mentioned it, that's what she did. Maybe, but as of now, it's still just a theory. I'm standing by that theory. But I would have liked them to actually have said, yes, that was the case, or actually it was something else. Maybe it's the boss. But unless, well, firstly, if the next couple of episodes get made, and if Ruby comes back, until then, and they say something there, then I guess it would just have to be a fan theory. And I suppose, I mean, my hope was that people kind of look back on this and be like, oh, okay, maybe that makes a little bit more sense. It's not so bad now, because a lot of people were very upset about this reveal because of all of the build up. But and to be honest, I kind of see where Russell's coming from. But when you've got all of this mystery that isn't explained, then yeah, this is the problem that Chibnall had. But he did that as well with the whole Timeless Child and Division stuff. He would set up mysteries just for the sake of it. Even Moffat, for the most part, he managed to explain things by the end of the Time of the Doctor, but there were still some questions from the 11th Doctor's era that maybe have flown under the radar, that weren't completely explained because they didn't have as much time to explain those in more stories. I don't think it was as much of an issue in the 12th Doctor's era, but although the hybrid one, it's still a bit confusing of what that actually was. But I think 12's era kind of isn't as impacted by that as much as 11's. And with a 2-season plan, it didn't have to be. They could have said something, but no, decided not to. But I'm still okay more with it than most people were. But I do think there should have been an explanation of why, the hidden song inside Ruby, why she couldn't find out her mother's name until after Sutek's reveal, etc. Standing by the Mrs. Flood theory. But I would have liked, and some people would be like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty obvious," but still, I'm like, well, yeah, but if they explain it in the episode, then it kind of wraps it up. But they don't, so it's just gonna have to remain a theory. Empire of Death, I find more disappointing for the climax rather than the actual reveal, and to be honest, and I think that the episode just kind of falls to the ground after a bit of time. Which is a shame, because it was looking really exciting. Moving on to my honourable mention. I can't believe I've gone so long just talking about the dishonourable mention. Damn, I've got to move on. I've got 12 stories to talk about this time, not 8. So next up, the honourable mention is The Robot Revolution from Season 2. So I'll try and talk about the Season 2 stories a little bit less than the Season 1 stories, because I've just done the big ranking for that one. But as I mentioned in that, The Robot Revolution is a good start to the season. If it had been the weakest story of that season, Season 2 would have probably been one of the best seasons, but unfortunately, Robot Revolution came 6th on that list out of 8. The other two are further down. They're above Empire of Death, Legend of Ruby Sunday, but still. I suppose it's kind of fair that it's about 50-50 between the two seasons on the list, including these mentions and what's left off the list as well. But I can't deny that I hoped that more Season 2 would probably be on here when it started up, but unfortunately it didn't quite work that way. I talked about that in that other video. But suffice to say, the best stuff of the season is coming up on the list, as same with Season 1. In my opinion, sorry Boom fans in advance, that one is not on the list. But yeah, Robot Revolution I find was a good start to Season 2 and introduced Belinda well. Yeah, it's fine. Maybe the fate of the villain could have been a bit different. It was funny at the time, but looking back on it, maybe it could have been a bit different. But overall, it is fairly solid, fairly good. Oh yeah, that's another thing regarding the villain. They weren't really sure whether to, because they say that they are in pain at some point. They like the reveal of that his after all this time, they're like now in pain. They need help to be saved, but they don't really explore that much more. So I think maybe that could have been something that could have been either removed or expanded on, one or the other. I don't think it works as it's that angle works as it is. Maybe if they used them transforming back into a baby to be like they've been saved and get to start again, raised better like Margaret Savine, then maybe. But no, I mean, like I said, it was funny at the time, but the polish cleaning up the sperm and egg cells. But yeah, I think the better ending could have worked, and especially considering the fate of another young white male villain, albeit an alien villain in the story, considering the fate of another villain in the series later on, it kind of raises some question marks. Yeah, I will also say that it is interesting that we got 3 white male villains in their 20s this season. I mean, that's the different motives. Like, Alan is a incel, wants to be in control. Conrad's a grifter. He wants power, money, fame through his right-wing influence, and later, being in charge of the Wish World, he wants the world to be happy, how he sees it. And then Kid, who is a terrorist out for revenge against a corporation that committed I want to say homicide. That's not right. Genocide on his planet and people, which sort of somewhat sympathetic if it wasn't for the fact he's about to commit double genocide on an equally, if not greater scale. And he probably gets the worst fate out of the 3. Again, more on that in the Season 2 ranking video and previous Interstellar Song Contest videos. But yeah, considering that one specifically, that fate, yeah, maybe the Alan one isn't quite as funny anymore as it was at the time. But speaking of villains whose skin color is white, number 10, Dot and Bubble from Season 1. Now, this episode handles it really well. This is really interesting, as it shows this white privileged young person society. Oh yeah, more young people being the villains. I swear, like, we've got this like a situation like with the Dominators, where the young people wanted to fight and the old people were passive. And I thought, when I saw that story for the review, I would have thought, oh, shouldn't it have been the other way around? Like, old people lived through the wars, and the young people. That was at the end of the 1960s. So young people would have been all like peace and, And I thought for that time period, I think the roles were the wrong way round. And I feel like here, not this story so much, but more so in Season 2, that the villains are more younger people. The white male villains are more younger people. And this also happens to here and in 73 Yards as well, to be honest, as well. So most of the white villains, especially white male villains in Season 2, are younger people, which is okay. That's a choice. I mean, not that there isn't any out there in the world, but it's just like, okay, that's a choice. I mean, it makes sense for 1 or 2, but when you do 3 in a season and then couple that with the ones from this season, especially with this episode, it's like, it's a choice. It's a choice. Maybe you could start criticizing some older right-wing extremists as well, maybe in the next season. But yeah, I'm not gonna go, ew, witness, ew, every villain's the white man sort of vibes. Of course, I'm not gonna do that. But it is interesting to note that that is a choice. Dot and Bubble, however, I think manages to handle that the best out of all of these episodes, because you don't really notice it that well. You're not looking for it until the big the ending. You got clues and hints, and going back you can kind of pick it up, but you're not really paying attention to it. So it does come out surprising. In fact, the classism angle sort of is more at the forefront in people's minds when watching it. More people would have thought it was more of the class system. It's the rich kids, late teens to late 20s, rich young adults. But you don't really clock it until later on. But when you do rewatch it, it does make sense. And in the end, the monsters end up being the good guys. After all, the real villains were the friends we thought we made along the way, but weren't actually friends. They were actually the villains. Except Ricky September, possibly. I mean, he never outright says anything racist, but because he's part of that same society, It's a very very high possibility, but I think with him there is room for, well, maybe not. He definitely was the most educated out of everybody. Dr. Bubble, I think, handles this story probably the strongest out of all of them, and I think the Black Mirror concept and following this other character, but it turns out you're actually following who ends up becoming the real villain of the story, very well, and shows that not everybody wants to be saved by the Doctor for reasons, and you can't always save everybody. It's a story about failure for the Doctor because they reject him for who he is currently. I mean, yeah, this works really well. It's really good. It is a bit of a acquired taste of a story, per se, especially when watching it for the first time. It is a bit of an acquired taste. Again, after a few rewatches, it's a bit easier to stomach, despite that ending being quite powerful and shocking. Still, again, it probably is the strongest script when dealing with this topic. Number 9, a bit more of a personal favourite rather than an objective best. Joy to the World. Again, this one is mainly just a personal thing rather than an objective thing, but in my opinion, Joy to the World is a fun, entertaining Christmas special. It's not really got much of a plot, but there is enough plot to warrant the story. It's enjoyable. I like Joy. The bits where she, again, when the Doctor makes her angry is really good, and also that ending, whilst the visuals look a little bit, the green screen at least looks a bit hokey and a bit wonky, but it does still give me an emotional edge at the end every time. It is really good on that level. Yeah, I've talked about this again more in the ranking just gone, but yeah, but as I say, I think it's in my opinion, Stephen Moffat's a better 15th Doctor script. I know a lot of people adore Boom, and not that many people kind of really like this one. It just kind of see it as okay at best. But for me, I think Boom's good, but I just can't get into it as much as everybody else. Whilst this one, I'm engaged with it super easy, and I'm just like full on in. And so yeah, really good. So in my opinion, it's not only Stephen Moffat's better script for the 15th Doctor's era, sorry Boom stands, but it's also his, as this is apparently his last script again. I keep saying that, but okay. His apparent last script for the show, then it's a better last script for the show than Twice Upon a Time, which he initially left on, as well as also Hellbent, which he was planning to go out on, and even Time of the Doctor, where he might also have planned to go out on if he hadn't decided to stay for Capaldi. The only one I would say is probably better is, because Twice Upon a Time he added that one on because Chris Chibnall didn't want to do the 2017 Christmas special. Otherwise, Series 10's finale, World Enough in Time, The Doctor Falls, would have been the final Moffat script, as well as the final Capaldi script. So, had that been it, that would have been the best one. But since Twice Upon a Time ended up taking that category, then this one tops that one, and it's probably so the best script that is considered Stephen Moffat's last, or what he was planning to go out with, besides The Doctor Falls. So Joy to the World is the Season 2 2024 Christmas special. Moving on to number 8, which is the better of the two musical-themed episodes from these two seasons, The Devil's Chord from Season 1. Okay, well, to be honest, Interstellar Song Contest, if it wasn't for that scene, which I keep going on about, that one might have actually been better than this one. I think that one had a potential to be really great, but because of the choices they made at the end of Act 2, start of Act 3, that episode has gone way down, as you would have seen in my previous ranking. Devil's Chord, on the other hand, like Joy to the World, I find it enjoyable. It's a more of a personal enjoyment thing, rather than objectively this is one of the best episodes. I know there's a couple people, like my friends Jean from Universals and Zach, friend of the Universals, don't really like it. They honestly prefer Space Babies. Well, Jean does anyway. But personally, I think this is a really good episode. It's got some great musical stuff. Maestro's a great villain. Jinx Monsoon does a really good job. She's also really great in that Proms minisode as well, which will not be on this list. Can I count that in the overall one at the end? Maybe I may as well. And whilst the Beatles don't look much like their original counterparts, that's fine. It's Doctor Who. It's not supposed to be a docudrama. Just so long as you recognise that it's the Beatles rather than being completely accurate. Besides, it's, time's been changed in this universe, so yeah, that could be another reason. But it's fine, so long as they're good singers. Yeah. And honestly, I've got a dog called Fred could actually beat out There's Always a Twist at the End as the best song of the episode, as well as one of the better songs of the run. There's a lot of great musical numbers in this era. None of them in 14's era, surprisingly. It's only in 15's. But yeah, it's a really fun, enjoyable episode that uses its setting really well, uses its historical characters well. Maybe there could have been a bit more for them to do, but overall, it's a fun episode, and yeah, with a fun villain. Moving on to number 7, now we're back to a more objective perspective by placing this episode here, The Story and the Engine from Season 2. The last of the back-to-back hits from Season 2 before things went downhill with Interstellar Song Contest. The Story and the Engine see, as I mentioned in that ranking, it's mostly set in one location, as like Boom, with Stephen Moffat coming off of writing a play when he wrote that and being in that mindset. Inula Elms is more of a playwright, so he's got that in his mind when writing this story. It's also really great incorporating African culture into the story, letting us expand and experience stuff outside of the UK or the Western world, much like Demons of the Punjab did with India, to be honest, India/Pakistan. Although whilst that was a pseudo-historical story, this is a not too distant past story, in a way, 2019, as opposed to, Demons of the Punjab was 1947 that was set. So yeah, it's really good, and it ties in with the God storyline as well, very interestingly, without it actually having a full-on God in it. Spoiler alert. But yeah, it's really good. I really liked it as an episode, and it's a strong kind of, well, I suppose outside of the scenes with the spider, budget-saving episode. Actually, no, the drawings on the board probably took a bit of effect. So actually, I suppose the budget-saving episode was Lucky Day for this season. Maybe to the Weller to a lesser extent as well. But yeah, this one works really well. It's really good, and I think the theatre setting works well. I can understand some people finding that a bit of a tricky thing to get around, but I think overall it's still a really good episode and uses that format really well. Moving on to number 6. And to be honest, numbers 5 and 6, these two stories, I honestly could swap them round depending how I feel on the story. They were very close. It was pretty. I was considering both at 5, but equally that means the other went at 6, and it was a kind of a tight, close decision. But this is what I've settled on, including after rewatching season 2's episodes for its ranking and to confirm this ranking's placement as well. And to be honest, season 2's ranking didn't really change much after my rewatch, compared to when I did them for the reviews. This list, on the other hand, had the odd change here and there before I settled on the final one. But before I rewatched season 2 for the season 2 ranking video. But now that that's done, I've solidified this list as well. So I'm safe with myself to place this story at 6 and the other one at 5 of these two. And number 6 is therefore Lucky Day from season 2. So, yeah, I'll tell you what the other one is when we get to number 5. But I debated these two stories at these two spots between each other. Like, they were it was gonna be between the two spots that each episode was gonna be in, and this is how it ended up. So Lucky Day comes in at 6. And I might get to why or why I had decided on the other one being 5 when we get to that one. But Lucky Day, as mentioned in the previous ranking, again, it's a very good episode, very strong. The first half is really nice with Ruby meeting Conrad, falling in love with him, and then it turns out he's actually, well, instead of being the new Elton Pope, he's basically, he turns out to be evil. Well, not so much evil, but evil in terms of a modern day 21st century Britain sense. But he's a dick. Really bluntly, and that middle part, second half of the episode, that did have quite a bit of great tension with what's going on. I was wondering how on earth they were going to do the whole anti-unit storyline in this season when the reports of that were coming out last year when filming. Or even the end of 2023, even. How was that going to play into it? But I think it's handled well enough. It's not focused on too much, but it is handled well enough. And I'm wondering if any of it's going to tie in with War Between the Land and the Sea when that comes around either. Are people going to be... Is there going to be some people who still are wary of UNIT? Can they be trusted in the War Between the Land and the Sea? We'll find out later this year. Well, hopefully. It's supposed to be later this year. Although, that being said, there doesn't seem to be much happening next year outside Circuit Breaker and Expanded Media. Something I didn't touch upon in the Season 2 ranking was that I am happy that we did get a Ruby-centered episode, even if it is a bit of an odd jump from the well to Story in the Engine for Belinda and the Doctor's travels. It definitely at the time it felt like it was quite odd going 2 weeks. I mean, they do appear in this episode, but because we're waiting weekly for each episode, and it felt weird that when Story in the Engine came out, it had been 2 weeks into the well, and it felt like we hadn't seen him in ages, which is so weird. It's just an episode guest appearance, and then handed over to Ruby to lead the episode. But it still feels a bit strange. Even more so than the Doctor not really being in 73 Yards and Dot and Bubble that much, and going from Boom to Rogue with him. I suppose he is in Dot and Bubble for a fair amount, as is Ruby. But yeah, it's a bit of a strange jump. But still, I really enjoyed Ruby as the lead in this episode, and also as a pseudo-unit spin-off pilot, in a way. So yeah, on the whole, it's a good one. Almost tying with this episode for the same spot. Number 5, this one just goes a teeny weeny midi spot above Lucky Day, and that is 73 Yards from Season 1. Now, 73 Yards is interesting because this is a very experimental story featuring Ruby once again as the lead character, but this time going through ends up kind of being a parallel universe or an aborted timeline that features magic and mystery and a mysterious woman that if people go near, then they're going to run away from Ruby scared and not really like her for some reason. There's also later on political intrigue featuring a big bad politician guy that Russell does really well. It's just a shame that it's only a portion of the episode, but again, it builds that tension, that fear factor. And on the first viewing of this episode I had, that was really high and really strong. I think that's what's contributed that story, that this is why I've placed this one above that, is the first viewing of this one, I won't forget it. It was really powerful. It's really good, and I mean, I did notice there was some kind of not so good moments on the first viewing, like the whole Marty storyline. I think could have been done better. I think it should have been scrapped, in all honesty, to be honest. I don't think it was needed. It's just another reason for Ruby to bring down Roger Ap Gilliam. But yeah, it wasn't really needed, especially with I mean, it was implied that he was an abusive, or at the very least, not very nice partner in a relationship with her. That's the implication, but it's not really stated. It was a bit more obvious with the Master and Lucy Saxons in Last of the Time Lords, and they didn't really focus on that too much, but it was in the background. You could kind of if you rewatched it a few times, you could kind of pick up on it. Here, it's just kind of bare minimum implied sort of situation, like the barest minimum. So I think it either should have been expanded on more or scrapped. That is another issue with this episode. It is trying to do like maybe 2 or 3 plots at the same time, and they're fighting for space, like the opening in the Welsh village with the whole magical mystery fairy-esque stuff and Mad Jack and all that, trying to be a bit of a folklore horror mystery, and then the Ruby goes home, and then the woman is still following her, and everybody abandoning her, and she eventually ends up being alone for the next 2 and a bit decades of her life, and then 2.5-ish decades of her life, and then we get the Roger Ap Gilliam bring down plot, and it's into the political intrigue situation, and then we end on sort of a mix of the first two at the very end when Ruby's really old. So yeah, the episode, it's a still 45 to 50 minute long episode, and these 3 plot lines are still fighting for space. But still, it was still a very powerful episode, especially on the first viewing. And while you could probably pick the nits, especially with the Roger Gilliam plot, with multiple viewings and more scrutiny. But I won't forget the first viewing of that. It was powerful. So I think that's why I settled on this story being 5th and Lucky Day being 6th. Even though I think maybe Lucky Day, maybe it had the more streamlined script, and maybe the political stuff was maybe handled a bit better there. Although the Roger Ap Gilliam tension stuff was really good. But I think these 2 episodes work they kind of complement each other. Not watched back to back, but I think they do kind of fall into the same placements, or similar placements at the very least, and work kind of as a back to back on the ranking. So yeah, moving on to number 4. This time it's the 2023 Christmas special from season 1, The Church on Ruby Road. Officially the post-regeneration story for the 15th Doctor, and technically his first outside of the Giggle, and Ruby's first episode. And let's be honest, it's besides one more story that's coming up later, which doesn't really focus on her as much. This is the best one with her, besides that later one. But again, she's not in that one as much. I'll tell you about that in a bit. Church on Ruby Road's another one where people seem to be hot or cold on. I think most people liked it at the time, but wasn't a fan favourite, but quite a few people did like it, and now it's kind of like, yeah, it's likeable. I suppose if it's how you like your flavour of Doctor Who, because this here is very more fantasy inspired, especially with this episode, and also focusing on the gods aspect as well. And but if you take that as like, this is the direction the era is going, this is a good jumping off point for 15's run. Even though some of it did start with 14's trilogy. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. This, again, not going to forget the first viewing of this episode. I can't believe it. Wow. This era is out. This era was done in less than 18 months. I remember watching the 15th Doctor's first Christmas special just a few weeks after he appeared in the Giggle, just a few weeks after the 60th specials, and we were looking forward to the next season the following year, which would have been the first series in 2.5 years after Flux End 2021. So the first full series in 2.5 years, and yeah, so this episode was great. This was a joy to watch at Christmas 23 and subsequent rewatches. It's so good. It was so much fun, and it still holds up. It's still a really fun introduction to 15 and Ruby. I suppose more 15 introduction was in the Giggle, but as his first story. This was so much fun. It's honestly, I think it was going to be hard to top this one with Joy to the World or any other episode. So I'm not surprised that one didn't quite reach the same heights as this one. I know people do prefer this one over that. But yeah, this is still a really fun and engaging episode. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, and it's a good example of how to like your main characters fairly easily. I mean, Ruby's probably a companion who I probably liked the most, like that. I mean, yeah, sure, I liked the other ones in their first episodes or in their debuts. Okay, maybe not so much Donna and Runaway Bride, but she was definitely much better in Partners in Crime. That's character growth for you. But in terms of instantly liking the character, I think this episode, the first half of that, did a solid job, incredible job even, with Miss Ruby Sunday. And yeah, I don't think I've taken to a companion this quickly as I have with her. Sorry, Belinda in Robot Revolution. I thought you were amazing, but I think when it comes to the 15th Doctor era companions, I'm a Ruby Sunday stan. Maybe later on she doesn't quite get developed as much, but for this first introduction, then yeah, I'm full on board. Also, the goblins are fun. Like for a Christmas special, light-hearted. First one for the Doctor, first for the new Doctor, first one for the new companion. First Christmas special since 2017. And they missed the previous festive season, no Christmas or New Year special, so first festive story since Eve of the Daleks in 2022 New Year. Then yeah, it's a fun, enjoyable ride, and it's the start to season one. Technically, it's episode 0, season 1. Yeah, that's all the prologue, however you want to put it. It's really good, and yeah, I mean, some stuff that season 1 will do, and some of the Revelation stuff maybe won't look as good in retrospective, but for right here, right now, or rather, right then, it was brilliant. And yeah, in fact, it was even promising. Very promising, along with Wild Blue Yonder. And to be honest, I was sort of on a bit of a high from the giggle as well. Maybe I would have noticed the flaw, and Star Beast, and maybe I noticed the flaws of those two a bit more later on. But on a 60th anniversary and new era high, this was awesome, and it still holds up to this day. Number 3. Now back to objective territory, because whilst I honestly would actually prefer watching my number 4 position to number 3, but I will say number 3 is objectively better, and that's The Well from Season 2. aka Midnight 2 Midnight Harder, which is not a criticism I will have against it. In fact, if anything, it's actually probably a positive, as it helps build up some of those stakes and gives the Doctor a bit more, like, he's got a bit more of a connection to the villain of the story, so as opposed to it being a brand new but fairly similar creature. Maybe it wouldn't have worked out quite so well, but a lot of people have knocked this down just for being a sequel to Midnight, as opposed to anything that actually happens in the story or what it's about. Now, as I mentioned in my Season 2 ranking video, I actually really like how the villain is actually slightly different this time round, but still keeping those core traits and elements from Midnight. So it's doing similar stuff, but in a new way. So the creature has adapted. I think the time jump has helped as well as now they've moved the planets. This is a good way to do a sequel. I'm good with this, especially when handling it with a character who is deaf, and how they're able to do this. They trying to help them whilst they've got the creature on the back, and they're trying to work this all out. It's all really good. I do have the same issues with Midnight when it comes to the supporting characters reacting to it. When they're all, I thought this time they're a bit more kind of listening, trying to work out what's going on, and trying to actually try and resolve the situation more than Midnight, which was more about a group of innocent human beings turn into monsters when they're put into a dangerous situation. They're scared out of their wits, fearful for each other and their lives, and there's this 1 or 2 people that they want to get rid of so that they can feel a bit safer. Whether that will actually work or not is yet to be seen, and there is conflict between what they actually do there, as well as when they start becoming the other monsters. I mean, the entity's still the big villain, but humanity it pretty much does become the second main villain of that story. And here it's kind of toned down a little bit. There's people kind of trying to actually work out what they're going to do this time round, because the situation's a bit different. But we do get human, I suppose, I don't know if I could say villains, but definitely antagonists this time round. And as I mentioned in the Season 2 ranking and in the Well review, and probably the reaction as well, the whole bit where Cassio, Trooper Number 1, becomes Neville Catchlove from Empress of Mars from Series 10. So, kind of merging Midnight and Empress of Mars together for those scenes. I don't know. I don't think that kind of works. I really hope if there is a Midnight 3, they're going to tone it down again a bit more, and maybe it's just one idiot who is like that to try to do something. They get knocked off, and everybody else is like, "Oh shit, maybe we shouldn't do that." We sort of got that here, but because there was some of them were listening to him, and then when he started messing about, it did end up resulting in the death of half his team. So yeah, next time I think it should be the one idiot, and that would be like that's the message to everybody else, is not to be like that idiot. Midnight didn't quite do that. It was sort of more of a, like, it was straight down the middle sort of thing, with the people arguing, and some of them kind of swapped here and there depending on what was going on. But still, yeah, you're going down from like half your crew to maybe half the crew, but certainly there's this one guy who's trying to pull them in different directions, and he ends up getting half of them killed anyway. And then we could go down for a third episode. We could go down to like one idiot, and then everybody else just realizes, oh shit, maybe we shouldn't be like them. Or if you wanted to do a dot and bubble, you could have everybody being the idiot and nobody gets out alive, and the doctor's like, well, I tried to tell you, but you didn't listen to me. Power of the Dalek style. Although more people survived that story. Anyway, that's my only kind of issue with the well, is the Cassio becomes Neville Catchlove from Empress of Mars stuff. Other than that, I think the episode does a really great job of building the tension and the scares and the horror, and yeah, it is really great. But I probably would prefer watching Churchill and Ruby Road over it. If I was given the choice, I probably would take the campy Goblin Christmas special over this one, just to watch for fun. However, the top two can work as a kind of mediums. Whilst they're not particularly horror themes like The Well, and maybe they're still more on the light side like Church and Ruby Road, they still kind of fit that great middle ground that work brilliantly for Doctor Who stories. So, starting off with number 2, the best story from season 1, and probably that season's most traditionally Who episode, Rogue. First of all, I have a bone to pick with Doctor Who TV. Why is this episode in your, or at least prior to season 2's broadcast, why is this episode one of the top 20 worst modern Who episodes? Come on, people, there's way worse. Not including the other 20 on that list, most of which I agree with. There was a lot of Jodie era hate on that list, FYI. I mean, yeah, some of them deserve it, but still, a bit of Jodie in season 1 dislike bias to them on here, and I wouldn't be surprised if season 2 got a similar problem as well. Like seasons 1, like it was Jodie and Shooty eras that were mostly getting hate, and also maybe the odd 9 to 12 episode like Fear Her or Sleep More, maybe. But mostly Jodie and Shooty stuff. I would not be surprised if that continued with season 2's stories on there. The plus, I suppose Rogue would be off that list then. Yay. In my opinion, Rogue is easily the best episode of season 1. It's so enjoyable, so fun. Yeah, maybe there's a few nitpicks here and there, but I think this one is probably the best episode, and I had a great time with it. I think Rogue's a great love interest, and it's such a shame we're not going to see much more of him again, unless maybe they all do something in the future. But if they do, it might not be with Shooty, it might be with Billy Piper or whoever takes over from there. The villains are pretty interesting. They want to role play, or as Mr. Sada says, more like LARPing the planet to death. And the historic setting works really great, and I think the story works really well, combining all of these elements together. There's a few cheats here and there, like Ruby somehow not, she's implied to be killed and have her body taken over by one of the Chulda, the aliens. But then it turns out actually she was just cosplaying, she's just, or role-playing even, and just, there's this whole other situation where she got out of things. So not quite perfect. But overall, I think Rogue is a brilliant script and remains my favourite from the first season. However, my favourite story from this era overall comes from season 2, and that My number one choice is Lux. Now, Lux, similarly like Rogue, is a very fun episode featuring is more of a traditional Doctor Who adventure, but adds also that spice of the fantasy god elements I was talking about earlier. And it blends it really well into the most creative villain of the series, Mr. Ring-a-Ding, who is phenomenal. Along with Dugadoo, he's easily the most iconic thing from the season. And they both have amazing songs as well. I've mentioned in the season 2 ranking video, I love film and cinema stuff and seeing how the 1950s style of that works in here. I like the meta commentary. I think that works really well in execution, and it's actually kind of nice and cute. More of a tribute to the fan than actually mocking them. You got a bit of that as well, but hey, I mean, you can't resist doing a bit of that. Come on, let's be honest. It's basically like Love and Monsters, but updated for the modern run, and also a bit more fourth breaking in that sense, as opposed to a homage. But yeah, it's a really great. Maybe the third act could have been a little bit stronger, but I think that's sort of kind of implied to be a bit of the point as well, especially with the meta commentary. Still, overall, Lux was an absolute fantastic episode. I'm running out of time because I've only got a bit of time on my space on my phone, so I'm having to speed through these last few ones quickly. So yeah, that's my top 10 15th Doctors ranking. So to recap the list, number 10 was Dot and Bubble, number 9, Joy to the World, number 8, The Devil's Chord, number 7, The Story and the Engine, number 6, Lucky Day, number 5, 73 Yards, number 4, The Church on Ruby Road, number 3, The Well, number 2, Rogue, and number 1, Lux. And as for the other episodes, well, first of all, I probably would place The Giggle probably between The Devil's Chord and Joy to the World. Robot Revolution comes 11 as my honourable mention, and then number 12 would be Boom. So Boom fans rejoice, still top 12. And then, surprisingly, Which World Reality War would come 13. The Interstellar Song Contest would be 14. Space Babies 15. And then dishonourable mention, Empire of Death, Legend of Ruby Sunday would be 16. And the mini-sode would probably be between 12 and 13. So lower than Boom, but above the season 2 finale. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching this ranking. But before I go, and just with the last few minutes left, I'd just like to raise a toast and say thank you to Ncuti Gatwa. Thank you for being the Doctor. You were fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Here's to you. Much needed. I loved the 15th Doctor. He was absolutely amazing. So full of life. And it still doesn't feel real that he may be gone. Maybe he might be back. But at time of recording, we don't know yet. We don't know if Billie Piper will be the 16th Doctor. And if she is, when they'll be back to have Adventures as the 16th Doctor. So I can't even say, but now we're going to move on to the Billie Piper era, because we don't even know if that's happening. Or if it does, when. And if it isn't her, then who instead? Or if the 15th Doctor's era does somehow continue. I don't know what's going on at the moment. Later video will update all the facts, hopefully, once we know. But if this is indeed the end of the 15th Doctor's era, then... Okay, I'm not going to say it was we had a great ending, unfortunately. Like I said, season 2 kind of peaked early on. But yeah, I am happy that it was fairly even on the list between the two season stories. Like, I didn't even do that on purpose. That was fair. That was pretty good, honestly, I think. I mean, I like it being that even, but I didn't do that on purpose. And yeah, same with the 11 to 16 placements even. So overall, I think it's been a bit of a mixed bag, but I still like more of it, and I think more of it is still good, but I think there is room for improvement when we do come around to the eventual 16th Doctor, whenever that happens. But still, good times for the most part. Anyway, so with only a few seconds left, less than a minute, yeah, basically. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time for a future video. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.